Hello, I'm Anita Casalina, and I am honored to be a part of the International Women's Day Conference. I am going to be talking about women in media using the power of our voices because the media gives us a reach and a power we have never had before. I've been in the media for many years. I owned a broadcast television studio after working freelance for decades. And now I host a video podcast called Navigating, where I speak with people about how we're making it through all of the challenging times that we find ourselves in this world. It's truly been one of the most satisfying things I've ever done. I've heard from women many times that what we see in front of the camera is, in traditional media, often determined by who is behind the camera making those decisions. And that's why in today's world, it's so exciting that we have digital media available to us, because we get to say what we want in our own voices without the gatekeepers and without those people, usually men, controlling what we say and how we say it. So I do want to talk about a little bit of the history of women in media, because it's not a very long history, at least in the Western world. And I apologize that I have a frame of reference that's very Western and very American. And I know that means that I'm missing out on what's happened in other parts of the world with women speaking up. But one of the things I thought about is that there were a few women in the 16th and 17th century in Europe who began writing newsletters and that sort of thing. And here in the United States of America, it was during the American Revolution. Women began to chronicle the war. There's beautiful letters that they wrote, newsletters, that made me realize that war is this catalyst that gives women an opportunity to break out and speak and take jobs, lots of different kinds of jobs that they wouldn't be given otherwise. When the men are at war, let's bring in the women and let them do the job until the war is over. And then, they go back to whatever we find is okay for them to be doing. There were women in the American Revolution. And then Dorothy Thompson, she's considered the first lady of American journalism. And she was one of the few women who began broadcasting in radio. Radio was fairly new in the 1930s. And she had a really wide reach with her radio broadcast. And then she was broadcasting from Nazi Germany as Hitler was coming into power, and was kicked out of the country in 1939 because she was telling the truth about what she was seeing. And again, continuing to come full circle to where we are now, that's what we're able to do now. We can tell the truth about who we are and what we are seeing around us. In my own lifetime, Barbara Walters was a great hero of women in journalism. She was on television very early in 1951 until she retired in 2014 and is part of the American Television Hall of Fame. I think what worked for her too, because women and how we have that sensitive side to us. She was the most amazing interviewer. She got people to talk about things that they were not used to speaking about. She was just sensitive that way. I watched a lot of her interviews and they were remarkable, the depth that she was able to get. And that's another attribute that we women have, is that we can plumb the depths of who another person is when we speak with them. When I first got into television, it was so strange to be one of the few women. I decided I wasn't going to just be off in the distance, taking notes and being a project manager for someone else. I was going to take on my own projects. That was really unusual back then. So not only did I take on my own project, I bought my own television camera, video camera, and back then we had these great big recorders you had to carry on your shoulder. So I had a recorder on one shoulder, camera on the other, and a big battery belt. I was young and strong, so I could do that. I would not be doing that now. I'm thrilled that we have our little phones now. I would walk into a room and I would be looked at like, what is she doing here? And just how women are in so many areas of the work world, we have to work really hard and we have to go that extra mile, and we have to do more than men do in order to be accepted, in order to be looked at as a colleague or or as an equal. Not everywhere, but because it's gotten so much better, but certainly back then in the early era of video production. And so I would have to go onto a set and just start talking and being nice to everybody because that was the way to find my way in. And it did get so much better, and now we see women all over the internet with their phones and talking, and it just makes me incredibly happy. I do want to talk about now, where we are today. And I've alluded to that several times now that because of digital media and the internet, women can find their own voices and they can find what matters to them and express that. Because women, we like to talk to one another. In fact, we like to talk. We're talkers, most of us anyway. And a lot of us want other people and other women in the world to know what our life is like, what our community is like, what our family's like, what's going on around us, what's the social situation, what's the political situation, what are we dealing with regarding climate change. They always say the world gets smaller now because of digital media. We're able to speak to anybody around the world. It gets a little overwhelming sometimes, but if you have a specific interest and a specific project in mind and a specific thing you want to tell the world, now is a really good time to do that because you can. Those are the breakthroughs that we're having now. That whatever comes into our minds, we can speak about now. And that certainly has never happened before. We don't have to run it past bosses. We don't have to make certain it meets with criteria that other people want it to. Of course, we want to be honest and we want to be clear. We want to make sure that everyone knows what it is we're talking about with clarity. That's, I feel, the most amazing breakthrough that has happened. Not a regulated industry now like it has been in the past. And what we're seeing here in the United States, speaking of regulations, is these billionaires. In fact, one specific family of billionaires has bought up so many of our outlets. The traditional media outlets are going to be controlled much more than they ever were. We used to be able to trust some of these outlets, some of these news agencies. And without mentioning names either of the family or of the agencies, I'm sure a lot of you are already aware of what's happening to the media here in the United States. And we want to get it back as soon as we can and get control of it. But in the meantime, what I'm seeing is the digital media, the alternative media, and that includes all of the social media platforms that we have available to us. We have the Meta platforms, we have Blue Sky, we have TikTok. Some of the most amazing news on the ground that I ever see is on TikTok. During protests in Minneapolis, for example, someone was on the ground with a phone. A lot of women were there with their phones and they were speaking and showing, and that was the truth that we were finding. The other aspect of what's going on with the digital media and independent media and social media is how much faster it is. It's fast. If I want to know what just happened, I don't go to Google News and look to see what maybe CNN or the New York Times has given us. New York Times is speeding up. They're getting faster now. They have people on the ground too. But I go to TikTok and I go to Instagram and I look to see what are the reels people have been posting. And X also, a lot of people are on X really fast. And you can stay up to the minute with what's happening with digital media. And that's another big breakthrough that we have now. It used to take days for news to travel cross country and certainly across the ocean. It would take a week before people knew what had happened here when they heard it over here. And now it's almost as instantaneous as it could be. So that's a huge breakthrough. So I wanted to give some instructions to any woman out there who wants to use media herself to tell her story, tell the story of what's going on around her, anything important and anything simple too. I mean, there's some fun things that aren't serious or heavy or ponderous. All of us need to hear those these days too, because it's a pretty chaotic world and we want to keep, being as happy and telling as many good stories as possible as well. So the first thing is really think about what you want to say. If you haven't done this before, really think about it. And you might want to make some notes. I haven't referred to them that much, but I do have some notes here just in case I forgot some things I wanted to say. Just make a little list of the important topics, and you can edit too now in your phone even. So I know that there are places in the world where digital literacy is not that far along, but almost everybody is able to get a phone at this point. And maybe not, but you can borrow a phone from a friend. And like I say, you think about what you want to say. And then what you do is you really calm yourself down. You make sure that your mind is calm, your body's relaxed. Think about how you want to look. Do you want to wear makeup? I wear makeup for my podcast, and because I'm older, I wear makeup. I've had guests here who are quite young, and they don't wear any makeup at all. And so it shouldn't be about age. It should be what makes you feel the best about yourself. How do you like to look? How do you want to look when you go out in public? How do you want to look when you go to a community event or a gathering with your family or friends? Think about that's how you're going to look on camera too. Think about what you want to wear. Think about, what's a good color for you? How do you like to look with your clothing too? I always think about that. It's like, what's a good color for me? I can't wear certain colors because they make me look too pale. So I wear what my daughter calls the jewel tones. She says, wear jewel tones, Mama. That's what works for you. And because of my coloring. But whatever looks good on you, make sure you put on something that's comfortable and that you feel good about. And then you don't even need a stand for your camera. You can just I have my phone here for your phone. You can just hold it up and you think about doing it in this ratio. If you're going to be in a social story, YouTube, you might want to turn it this way. But generally, most stories and videos and reels are told like this now. And you don't need a stand. You can just hold it. I know people who do a lot of videos and they walk along and they look at their phone. They walk. And the walking is fun too because it gives some motion and some interest to what they're saying. I've done a couple of those, but I see people who do them regularly, that's their brand, that they walk, maybe they have a stand attached to them, or they just hold it. They're just holding their phone. And as they talk, they're walking and you see trees going past them, and that adds interest to it as well. But what you want to do is not distract people too much from what you're trying to say, because that's your message. Unless what you're trying to do is show, these are the sheep in my field. This is my cat. This is the flowers I grew. These are my vegetables. This is how my house looks. This, like that. Then you'll be focusing on those things. But if it's you and your message, you want to be really clear. And so you calm yourself down, you dress and look as comfortable as you can for yourself so that you know that you're going to be saying things the way you want to, and not worrying about, does my hair look okay? Because you've already decided it looks okay. And then you use language that is commonly used, language that people use so that anybody can understand you. And then you think about when you're done, in these phones, I have an iPhone here. They do have, editing capabilities. And if you don't have that in your phone, maybe one of your friends does or somebody does, and you edit off the parts you don't like. For me, I often, when I do my private videos, I edit the front and the back, just the beginning and end. And then you go ahead and start placing it where you want it to go. You might send it as text to your friends and see what they think. Start with that. And then you might move on to sending it out on social media through Facebook, putting it into a story or a reel. If it's longer, put it in a reel. But then there's a little option to add to your story. So people who watch stories all the time can click on it. It says view the whole reel so they can watch it. But my real point here is you get to be yourself now more than ever before. using media, women get to show up and we get to really exemplify who we are, be who we are. And I feel strongly that the more women who start using media, the more women who begin to create videos to send out into the world, the more the world is going to change for the better. I have a huge amount of faith in women being able to change the world and make the world better. And the media, using media, gives us an opportunity that we haven't had before. And because we have it now, I think we should take full advantage of it. Thanks so much for listening. And again, I am incredibly grateful and honored to be a part of the International Women's Day Conference.